Hello, my name is Rocco Strangio, and I'm the host of the Law, AI, and Money podcast. I bring on attorneys, engineers, and entrepreneurs to unravel the world of AI and to discuss how it'll affect the legal profession. Today, I am joined by Katherine Hoffmann, CEO of Smart Reviews. Over the past decade, Katherine has built Smart Reviews into a trusted authority in the industry. Smart Reviews ensures the integrity of every case moving forward in mass torts. Her mission is to elevate standards, combat fraud, and build lasting transparency across the mass tort ecosystem. In our conversation, Katherine and I discuss her company, the role of AI in the legal landscape, and how we can better improve the mass tort landscape. We hope you enjoy our conversation. Hey, Katherine, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
Katherine, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to come on. As somebody who's doing something that I previously didn't know about in the space, and somebody who's an entrepreneur in that respect, respect you as a person, and I really thank you for coming on and taking the time to share your insights.
I really appreciate you having me
Yeah,
here.
yeah. So before we get into our conversation of what Smart Reviews does, can you give me a little bit of background on yourself and how Smart Reviews came to be?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started out initially thinking I wanted to be a doctor. Uh, I'm from Oregon.
Yeah.
I went to the Ohio State University with the thoughts of doing pre-med. Um, sort of took a shift there. Ended up thinking nursing maybe would be a better fit. And I really enjoyed clinical practice, being able to be an advocate for patients, be there when people are going through something really difficult. But I just knew it wasn't the right fit for me. I think I was a little bit too emotionally
Yeah.
attached. And so I looked at other areas that I thought would be good, ended up going back to school for legal studies, thinking, okay, well, I'll go be a lawyer, right? And no offense to any lawyers, but I'm glad I didn't actually end up being a lawyer. But I ended up finding this neat little niche of medical paralegal, legal nurse, this space where you got to do sort of both worlds, right? And they're both really interesting to me. They're ever changing. Every day there's new case law. Every day there's something new discovered. A medication, something in the medical
Yeah.
field, new studies that come out, and so this like constant evolving world of both of these very interesting areas. I loved the idea of getting to do both. My first job was in Medicaid tort recovery,
Okay.
which was painful, but I learned a lot. It was the least exciting job that I had, but I gained so much knowledge from a lot of the people that I worked with. I worked for special counsel for the Attorney
Yeah.
General in Ohio. So, very interesting job, but knew that wasn't the right fit. So, I ended up in mass tort defense.
Oh, really?
Was my first introduction into the actual like litigation space, and worked for a very large mass tort defense firm for pharmaceutical
Yep.
litigations. And they did, at the time, a lot of generic pharmaceutical defense. And then the Mensing decision came out and sort of changed that. But it was really cool to get to be a part of the defense side to see how, cases are valuated, devaluated, how they're dealt with in a mass scope like that.
Hmm.
The part that bothered me with the background that I have and just the way that I'm wired was that we truly used case numbers for claimants on the defense side. Genuinely, every email was, and this isn't to say this is how
Yeah.
all defense firms operate, but it makes sense because you're identifying the right
Yeah.
person. If you've got a litigation with 30,000 claimants, you could have three, Carla Jones,
Totally. Yeah.
right?
Totally.
And so, but we had these claimants that were all identified by case number, and they felt sort of devalued in what they had gone through.
Yeah.
And so I struggled in that position, but I did learn so much that I think when I decided I wanted to go to the plaintiff side of things, I am so grateful. I worked with some amazing attorneys. I learned a lot. I think that it's so valuable to learn from your, from the other side of things,
No,
right?
totally.
I
To
want
have
to say
that
opposition
perspective, not a
because,
lot of people do for sure.
right. And so I ended up going to plaintiff side of things. Um, Get to see, single event as well as mass torts from the plaintiff side. But I realized it was still that same piece where the claimants, it's to them, they're one case, right? And to the firm, if you've taken on dozens, hundreds, thousands sometimes of cases, it's hard to really appreciate one case in the mix,
Yeah.
right? And so that was always a piece of it that I felt like was lacking. Even the best, I know a ton of incredible plaintiff attorneys that are amazing advocates, but it's still very hard for them, right, to be able to give the attention they would like to give to each one of their
Yeah.
clients. And so I saw that missing need. And then the other thing I saw was that things are so fractured, similar to the healthcare field, in litigation, where one, company is doing one piece, another company is doing another, and the communication is not great. And so I decided 12 years ago that I was going to start my own company to assist firms in mass tort litigation and single events and streamline the process. So we are, medical specialists on behalf of the law firm. The case comes in, we introduce ourselves, we make the client, understand how important they are to this firm, and that the attorneys and paralegals are working diligently to produce everything and fight everything and file everything and show up at every hearing and do all of these things on the litigation aspect of it, and that we're here as their partner in the damages portion, right? So we're here to make sure we understand what's happened to them, be able to validate their claims, and so when we're working up cases here at my company, we do like a touch point once a month with the clients. We just reach out and just say, hey, has anything changed, in your medicals we need to be aware of? How are you doing? Any, new contact information? Just reaching out just like human to human and reminding them too, hey, we just want to remind you, you've got the best lawyer in the business and they are working so hard on your case.
Yeah.
So they don't feel like they've gotten forgotten in their
That's so
case,
important
right?
for mass tort.
It is, and it's so hard for firms to be able to provide that. They want to,
They want
right?
to. That's the
But it
trade-off
just,
of multi-party. You can't. I mean, a lot of attorneys that I know, they do on individual cases, as on a case by case basis, can give some individual claimants that time. But if they were to do it for everybody, in some cases it's required, and like somebody calls into the firm, and so they have to deal with that claimant. But they want to, and if they did the same sort of one-on-one care that they did with that one claimant, they couldn't do it for everybody. They would need years and years and years just to do those phone calls.
yeah, then there's no way to have that
Yeah.
bandwidth. So I think that's where we, you know, pride ourselves on trying to make sure the claimant knows that they're the most important piece um, of their case,
Yeah.
right? So it isn't one big case they happen to be a part of. It's their case that is so important, happens to be a part of a bigger case, right? So we try to make that clear. We also try to set expectations right out of the gate with clients, which I think is so important. And we just say like, hey, if you went to work for 8 hours to collect whatever pay, you make in an 8-hour day, doing sometimes very repetitive tasks, think of it that way. My company's probably going to ask you for 8 hours of your time to do very repetitive tasks. But at the end of it, there's going to be a payout, right? It's going to be worth it. And no matter how the case resolves, you're going to know that you were an advocate for yourself, right? You fought for you and your injury and what you've been through. And so that's how we try to approach it in the front. And I really do think it makes a big difference because we've had people that we do the initial intake, we, call them back, check in a few times. We call to do the fact sheet, which is a lot of the information from the intake, plus sometimes just absolutely absurd. I feel like fact sheets at this point are like, what is your, grandmother's blood type? And so we call them back and we say, hey, remember, this the time that you're putting in, and they say, oh yeah, I'm only 2 or 3 hours into my 8-hour day, and joke about it. And so it changes that perspective of, we also try to we encourage them being good advocates for themselves, right? Like, you are doing something about this. Like, something was done to you, and now you get to do something about it. And I'm sure it's frustrating, the phone calls. I'm sure it's frustrating repeating yourself. I'm sure it's frustrating going through this over and over, but you owe that to yourself, right? To fight back, and this is the way that you do it. And we are going to ask you the same things because we want to make sure we get it right. Mm-hmm. And so I think that piece of it too is very helpful. So that was the goal from the beginning in doing this. Things have sort of evolved over time, but we, stayed true to those principles.
Yeah. So, and that's amazing. I think for the mass tort space and any space that deals with large volume, having and treating claimants not as, inventory, but as individuals in a larger litigation that all have horrible stories and unique situations is so important. That company definitely bridges the gap from that trade-off that we have to accept sometimes in mass tort litigation. The other company that you work with is Secondary Intake. Can you explain a little bit of what Secondary Intake does and how it supplements the mass tort space?
Yes. So I think it's honestly the most important thing that we're doing right now at my company. So by way of, spending the last 12 years working up these cases, from intake, right, all the way through to helping pick bellwethers and seeing those cases through the end, sometimes even helping on the backside of post-settlement resolution, we see the whole universe of it. And what we've seen shift in the last few years especially is where we used to have in the good old days of TV and radio, right? Everybody remembers those classic days, where you think, okay, I got 100 cases and 70 will convert because some are going to fall off and there's going to be some degree of claimant fraud, right? Or claimant deceit or whatever. People are very sensitive to the word fraud, so I try to be mindful of it. But, so there was always some degree of that. People that either maybe used the product, had the device, took the drug, and don't have the injury, but still feel justified in trying to be part of the claim because they think maybe this is going to happen to me someday, right? Or how dare they give me this or sell me this or let me use this without knowing that this was a risk. And so they feel justified in participating. And then there's also always been some degree of people who are just like, let me see if I can get in and see what happens. I don't feel bad for 3M or Johnson & Johnson or whoever's going to pay the bill on this. Let me just see what I can get in with, right? Yep. Just fully claimant-driven deceit, right? And we were used to that. We were used to seeing that. And then in the last couple of years, we saw this shift to truly believable, deceitful claimants, right? And it became very concerning. And in the last year, especially, we've done a lot of work to really figure out where is all of this coming from. And there is a whole industry now of fraud, of people who are creating fraudulent leads. Yeah. And it is so much more prevalent. It's so far reaching and has infiltrated the best companies, the best marketers, the best lead generators, the best case acquisition companies. It has gotten in there. It has found its way in. And I think all of the honest, good ones that I work with admit it, right? They know they want to do everything they can to stop it. And so what we have created here is we call it a secondary intake. So a lot of companies will call it insurance, right? So it's a very low cost service where we take the case at the same time when the retainer is signed. We get it at the same time as the firm. It goes to the firm as in secondary QC status, comes to us at the same time, and we do a background check. We run through what we've now created a database of hundreds of thousands of people to look for flags. We also we've created demographic profiles for every litigation that we can run them against. We look for any of these hits, and then we call the claimant. We don't repeat the intake. We, again, represent ourselves. They've signed a retainer already. They've signed a HIPAA.
Yep.
We are working on behalf of the law firm. We are medical specialists, and our goal is, so these are primarily people with medical backgrounds, the degree of which depending on the tort, but so they're saying we're a medical specialist. Our goal is to make sure we truly understand your injuries, and that we can get all of the records to support them. And then we work with the client to either get, a record they may have, a picture of a bottle they have, at home, or electronic chart record. Yep. We will call their provider with them. We will do everything that we can to try to get a confirmation of their diagnosis. And we also ask a series of questions to identify people that are not being honest, right? So we're asking medical questions. And so sometimes it's very simple, like, oh, I see here you had chemo, do you have a scar where your port was, right? Mm-hmm. And they'll hang up, right? Or they'll fumble through it, or they'll say it was in their leg or their stomach or something, and it's very clear, okay, they're trying to, they're taken off course. And so the ones that are claimant fraud tend to just drop off on their own. The ones that are coached fraud tend to try to push through it. They have all the answers. So they can tell you, if they're a double claim, they can tell you, I have a 1.3 centimeter meningioma in the frontal region of this portion of my brain. And they have all of these very, very specific statistics. And then you ask them something very basic that they should know, and they're completely thrown because they weren't prepped on that.
Yeah.
And so we've developed questions for each tort. For the secondary intake, we rotate them through. We change them constantly because the fraud's always one step behind us. Sometimes it feels like it's, we're neck and neck.
Yeah.
And so that's the secondary intake process. And I think the value to anyone that is purchasing leads, which is a gamble, right? Yep. If you're buying leads, not cases, you're gambling.
I mean, you always assume that a certain percentage of those cases and leads that you purchase will fall off in the same way that traditional cases that were, generated from advertising from a local attorney might fall off as well.
Correct. Yeah. Yes. So, and the thing is, most lead generators will give you a 14-day window to return a case if you can prove that it's truly never going to convert. It's truly a non-viable bad lead, right? So not someone that had a different type of brain tumor that they believed was a meningioma, but somebody that is absolutely just lying, right? Not a non-converting case ever. And so our goal is that, what we commit to is within that 14-day, we will give you a recommendation of keep the case, release the case. And we will also put if we suspect claimant deceit, so that, and that report then goes to the firm and to the lead generator in real time. We give it to them every other day. They get a report so they can see in real time, and they can start identifying patterns. So for the lead generators, you would think that we would be, the bad guys to them, but they've been incredible. Like, they've been so excited about this because it's giving them real-time feedback that, oh, hey, we got to shut down this source, or this is where we see the problem coming in, and they can actually correct in real time. They can also get returns back within that window where they may be able to get marketing dollars back, right? And so it's helping both sides of it. We're a third party. We don't have a dog in the fight. Our goal is to, honestly, at the end of the day, as naive as it sounds, my legitimate goal in all of this is to make sure that the right money gets to the right people.
Exactly.
And to be like the biggest advocate for this space and for claimants being able to speak up and to be able to get resolution when they are unjustly injured. We're not going to be able to do that if things continue the way they are, because tort reform is going to demolish this industry.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah. I want to say, I think it would be helpful for a lot of our listeners if we kind of explain how some of this fraud is surfacing, because when we talk about it, it almost seems like this happens on a case-by-case basis. There's some individuals who may or may not, have good knowledge of their individual case or are intentionally deceiving the law firm and the attorneys, but it's a lot more organized than that, correct?
It is, yeah. So what we have are these, I don't want to say they're lead generators because they're not. They're fraudulent case creators. And they are an industry. And we have spoken to them. We have let them coach us. We have let them believe that we're on their side working with them, right? So that we can learn what they're doing. And it is very scary. They take it very seriously. They make sure that they think that you really are willing to participate in this fraud.
Oftentimes in
They
different
essentially,
countries, correct?
yes, everyone we've spoken which has been a lot now. I've made this sort of like a personal. I've got like a vendetta here. I'm like personally committed to trying to do what I can to stop this fraud, but they basically they get with you. You can tell they determine that they think you really are wanting to participate in this,
Yeah.
and then they send you the exact intake for the call center that you're going to eventually call to, filled out with all your information. So they will let you use like an old address, or you can change your birthday by one day or whatever. Sometimes like if my real name is Katherine, but I can put Kate,
Yeah.
like if you're a little nervous about it, they'll let you alter some of your personal identification. Depends on where the case is going. Some of them you can't do that. You really have to be truthful with all your real information. But either way, they establish that. They send you everything. I mean, it's terrifying. If it's a rideshare case, they tell you who assaulted you and how. There are specific details. And then they schedule you to do an interview, a mock, intake.
Yeah.
And they go through the intake with you, and then they will review it internally, and then they will call you back to go over issues in that. I mean, this is
Give you
crazy,
a
right?
script and you
And
basically interview with them until you have
correct,
a
right?
solidified
And
pitch when it comes to intake.
they will say you need to make your voice go higher here. You need to take a breath here. We could hear you holding the paper. Like they have feedback on how to avoid all of the things that are being put in place on the other side to try to catch this fraud, right?
Yeah.
So they will run it through an AI program to see what the AI hits on as fraudulent to give you the feedback on how to counter it. And it's scary. I think honestly what the scariest part is that the nurses in my company, even when I've done it, every single one of us has gotten a retainer. Every single time.
Really?
Every time. Yep. We've all gotten through it, and all of us were lying, right? And so it works, right? It works.
But apart from intake, because there comes a moment in time where you have to submit proof of use and proof of injury, they can even use AI to create fraudulent medical documents, correct?
Correct. So we have, God love the people that are sloppy, right? And screenshot stuff where we can see where it came from, because that's where we've learned a lot of this, especially with the California wildfires. You had to give a license for a lot of the firms. That's what they wanted, to see that you had an address, right, that would have been affected by the fires. And so there's this AI program that can take a driver's license and superimpose your face on it. And we were very lucky that someone was sloppy enough to not crop out the name of this app that they were using, so that we can go and look at it, because what's terrifying, right? And I'll tell you this, I'm the most transparent person you're going to meet. We didn't catch that one. In our program, we have a program that identifies if something is Photoshop.
Yeah.
If the image is manipulated externally, right? And so these AI apps and software are so savvy that they can manipulate the image like within the image. And so the now archaic software that could detect Photoshop, right?
Yeah.
Which, for a lot of times was eyeballs.
Yeah.
But the software that came out to do that, it's beating it.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's really scary that they're utilizing all of these tools that we're utilizing to catch the fraud, to create the fraud, to out fraud the fraud, like out fraud the people catching it. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's fake medical records are being created that look very real. And this is, I think it's something that I'm always saying, like, I never want to do like fear tactics of working with us. Like, but there are people creating fake death certificates for babies in order to file NEC claims for the formula cases. That, I feel like that one fact tells you the degree of this, right?
Yeah.
That's a different degree of fraud.
Yeah, it's a depraved heart, sort of.
It's very scary. And so I think what a lot of people have the question of is how are these people agreeing to do it, right? Are they getting paid? And the crazy part is they are not. They're not getting paid. We assumed when we started getting into this to figure out how this was happening, that they say, oh, well, they Venmo you $50 or something, and they're preying on a population that $50, right? They'd be willing to participate in something that's going to take a couple hours of their time. And so that's what we assumed, and we realized it's not. What they're doing essentially is they're telling them, look, the law firm knows you're fraud, right? So you're going to talk to your attorney, and he knows that you're not a real case, but he's using you in order to build up his docket, because if he has more cases, he can settle higher. And you'll essentially get like a participation fee for having participated. He knows you're fake, but you can never admit it in front of him, because ethically, if you said it to him, he'd have to kick you out, right? And so the firm's aware that a certain percent of the cases are not legitimate, and they hold on to them just to get bigger settlements. And so you'll get some kind of participation amount, even though you don't have a valid claim. Everybody's in on it. Don't feel bad for 3M or whatever it is. You know,
that's their pitch to the affiliates that are kind of joining in on this, right?
Yeah. So, well, this is what they say to the actual claimants when they call them, right? Yeah. Right. And so they say basically it's usually you have to make a 90-day commitment, or they give some degree of time that's a few months. And they say in that time, you have to answer every phone call. You have to provide information. You have to be responsive, and you have to stick to the bit. And if you stick to the bit, they'll let you know when you're changing hands to the first person you got to stick to the bit with, right? Which is going to be a legitimate intake center that has no idea you're doing a bit, right? And they let you know when they're transferring you into that, and from there on, you stick to the bit. And so they also say if within that time frame you refer people who are also willing to stick to the bit, you will get extra money, another $5,000 per person or $10,000 per person or whatever
That's
it is that they will
participation
promise you.
Award that they
right.
Give.
So they're getting these people to commit this fraud for no money. They're paying them nothing.
Yeah.
That's the craziest part of it. And there are thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of these genuinely fraudulent leads. And like I said, the company that's forward facing with the client, with the firm, they have no idea.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, that's the thing, is that, you know, a lot of people might assume that the lawyers might be pushing for this to increase their settlements or put pressure on defense, but they have a good idea of how many injured claimants there are. Like a lot of these defective devices, they can point to how many people around the country have been affected by that defective drug or defective device, and they can forecast how many are going to join a litigation. But when fraudsters join the mix, that muddies those forecasts and may, in some circumstances, affect, you know, good people who have legitimate needs and cases from getting the settlement that they need, the recourse they need.
Absolutely. And I think there's also a change that's happened within the space where defense is more involved in looking at these cases, more involved in identifying the fraud. It's what their clients want, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the insurance companies and their carriers are saying, we're not just going to pay out on 1,000 cases if half of them could be fake, right? And so the push to identify fraud, defense has got much more involved in. It's not just here's a bucket of money, divvy it out how you want. They're moving more into a space of actually looking at individual claimants, actually wanting proof, right? And validating on their side as well. Not saying that it isn't something they've always done, obviously to some degree, right? Defense is looking at all of these cases, but it's the same thing. It's a mass tort. There are mass cases, right? Thousands and thousands and thousands of cases. So looking at every single individual one, or making sure that a settlement is only going to people that have their claim has been substantiated, that's not always been the way that it's gone, right? And defense has gotten real heavily involved, and we've seen, attorneys get sanctioned. We've seen judges a screaming. We've seen people very upset by fraud that the attorney does not realize is fraud, right? Getting filed in these cases, getting produced to defense, putting it into their hands. And so I think that, it's so important, and it's not to say my company, but that somebody is doing this real heavy QC within the time frame where the lead can be kicked back. That part of it is so important because it's a trickle down effect, right?
Yeah.
If we push it back within the return window and it goes back to someone who goes back to someone who goes back to someone who goes back to the guy that was fraud, he loses his money. So we've actually had it happen where the people we've worked with in the fraud space that think we're participating with them have said, hey, we know that this particular docket is running through smart reviews. We're not going there. We're actually going to have you come do your intake here because it's got a better chance of getting through, right? Or at least not being identified till it's past that return window where everyone's been paid, right? It's very scary. And so I think that it's important that we're doing this. It's not at all where we make money. We honestly, I keep getting told by the people on my board that we're breaking even on it. I don't care. I want to, it's an easy thing for us to scale. We know how to do it. I want every lead to run through our process to be able to identify and kick back the bad ones, right? Mm-hmm. And make sure that the right claims are getting through and drive the fraud out of this space. I'd love to say end it, but we're smarter than that. Drive it somewhere else, because it's so important that in this country that people can be advocates for themselves, that they can stand up to companies when they've been injured, right? Mm-hmm. And that's going to be not necessarily taken away, but it's going to be much more controlled and harder for people to do if we don't make a change in this, because we're giving defense ammunition for tort reform, right? We're creating a space for bad case law, right? That's going to hurt people for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And so I am very passionate about it right now. I'm trying to get the word out to everyone. Like, you should be utilizing either a company like any company, I don't care, like using something that is a neutral third party, right? And people that are generating leads, a lot of them have internal QC that does a great job. Yep. But it's different when we can see the universe of cases, right? We can see that right now, Depo-Provera in and around Atlanta, Georgia, fraud is the heaviest, right? 3% of the whole population of the country is in Georgia, and we've got almost 15% of the Depo claims in and around Atlanta, mm-hmm. right? And so we know that just statistically, it's so anomalous. Like, there's no way.
Well, there's other statistics that might, sometimes a law firm might be able to advertise locally because there's a lot of firms in and around the Atlanta area, and maybe that's why there's a big surge. I think it's more telling when there's, let's say, racial tells on why, a certain case might be fraudulent. For example, if there's a case that deals with sickle cell versus, lymphomas, I believe.
Right.
There's certain issues that you can point to that might not add up. If you could speak on that.
Yes. So like I said, we create basically your common claimant, right? So in a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma litigation, you've got a 68-year-old named Edward who treated at the VA, Caucasian man. Mm-hmm. That's going to be your average claimant. If you put 100 of them in the room, most of them are going to look like Edward, right? And so we create that not to fraud out or rule out claimants that don't look like Edward, right? But to identify ones that we need to do a deeper dive on. Like you said, African Americans, statistically less than 10% of all the people with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma are African American, right? So if we get a docket in, or we get a surge of 300 cases in one day that are non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and 70% of them are African American, we already know there's a problem, right? And we can see the pool come in at once. And so, like what I was saying about Atlanta, Georgia, we're seeing ones that we've actually determined are 100% fraud. So we can see where is the fraud. They're literal on our map. It's literal hotbeds of it because they're referral sourced, right? So they grow in these little cells, and then they find all the people willing to participate and start up somewhere else. And so we can see those patterns. We see a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma docket, same with age, right? If we get a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma docket and everyone's under the age of 50, we already know there's a problem. We already know that there's going to be a very high percent of fraud because you would expect 4, 5, 6% of your claimants to be under the age of 50 with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And so what's nice is we can look at a universe of cases, right? So not just one firm, not one lead generator, because we get them from both. We get cases from lead generators and we get them from the law firms as well, and look at all of it and say, okay, what do we know is going to be the highest likelihood of fraud before we even call these clients, mm-hmm. so that we can do a deeper dive or make it that much more important. When we do secondary intake, like I said, it's very inexpensive. And the goal is to weed out the cases that will never convert. So you can return them, right? Or whatever agreement you have with the lead generator. And if but for nothing else, not spend additional money trying to work up a case that's never going to convert. But we also say there's the benefit. Some percent of those cases, we're going to give you a confirmed diagnosis. We're going to push to, make sure the claimant understands that the sooner we can confirm they have the injury, the easier everything's going to go, less people are going to be bugging them. And so we work really hard to do that. So I think that's kind of like an added benefit that you're also going to get some degree of confirmed diagnosis. And even though we do tons and tons of actual case workup, so we do get to see exactly what claimants are converting, we also push for that because we can see in real time the leads that are coming in today, which ones we know are going to convert. Not just the ones that look like an Edward, but the ones we've actually confirmed do have the diagnosis, because it is constantly shifting, constantly changing. We bob, they weave. I think it is incredibly, incredibly risky, even if you do everything in-house at this point, to not use some kind of third-party QC.
Yeah. Lastly, Katherine, are certain litigations more prone to this sort of issue as opposed to others?
Yes. So it's either sometimes it's the litigation itself, and sometimes it's where in the life cycle the litigation is. Mm-hmm. So we've been talking about non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So those cases, we say here it's Roundup Part 2. So, we already had a lot of the valid claimants, participated in sort of the first round, we say, of the Roundup litigation. And so now we've got less fish in a pond, but just as many people wanting just as many fish out of that pond, right? So that in and of itself encourages fraud because people want to buy 10 fish out of a pond with 4. People are going to put things that look like fish in there, right? And sell them as fish. And so that one already started pretty high fraud. But as it's progressed to where we are right now, there's still people trying to put money into the space and there aren't any fish left. So we know we really have to scrutinize those cases because there just aren't a lot. It truly is like people that were just diagnosed would be the ones joining. or have some very rare variant where they didn't realize they could have participated. And so those cases are having a high fraud. And then sometimes it's just where the demographic is that you're targeting for the lawsuit may also be the demographic that's going to be at a higher incident of participating in that fraud, right? And so there's a lot of factors that go into play, and we can say literally every day, I can tell you, because we're doing thousands of these calls every day, I can tell you right now, on average, a Depo Provera case is converting to a good lead at this rate, and a hair relaxer at this rate. Hair relaxer has been low since the beginning. It is, our conversion rate on those cases is extremely low compared to similar cancer torts. And we know pretty well what to look for in there to identify those cases. The NEC cases are probably one of the lowest converting torts I've ever seen in participating in mass torts for the last 15 years. It's like, for a lot of firms, it's a single digit number of actual leads that are going to convert into cases. They're extremely medically complex.
Yeah, and how do you validate those claims if there are tools like AI forging death certificates? Do you have to reach out to like the hospital?
Correct. Yeah. So that is what we've now started to, when we suspect that a document, if something isn't adding up, and we'll call the facility, for every single one, we call their treating doctor to confirm that they are a patient there. We have assigned HIPAA, right? They've given authority to the firm or third party on their behalf to call. So we do call to confirm they're treating with the physician that they claim that they are. If the physician says that they're not, right, and then they've provided us a document, we will actually ask that provider if they would like to see this fraudulent document. We don't say that. We say, hey, we have this document that's from your facility. Would it be okay? You're saying this person wasn't there, but we have a document. Are you willing to look at it and see it? I think we play it as, we think there's an issue in your side, right? And you got some lady on the other side that's like, it's not our problem. Like, we're not wrong, you're wrong. Send it over. And then they're like, yeah, this is fake. And that has helped because now we've been able to establish markings, patterns, things that we've seen. And now it's been going on long enough. It's like anything else. It's like, there's always some degree of people being sloppy.
Yeah.
We have in our possession 3 of the identical medical record where the name is just different. They came in with 3 different individuals, right? And so, you know, it runs against our own database, the documents and flags, not just on a piece of it, but it's like, it's the literal exact same fake medical record. They just changed someone's name, right? Thinking that they're all going to end up in someone else's hands. And they are. All 3 of them are with separate law firms, right? But because all 3 ran through us, we were able to identify it and let those firms know that all 3 of them were fake.
And learn from it and develop some sort of pattern where you can recognize more clearly what is real and what's not.
Yes. So keeping the mission going strong.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't such an amazing mission because it's not that we want to, you know, say all these claimants have fake claims and put a stake in it, but we want to improve the space because we believe in it. We believe that there's a lot of claimants in this country that deserve recourse, maybe even more than they're getting. And a lot of times there's fraudsters who are not only taking those settlement dollars away from claimants who need it, because these settlements get prorated to how many claimants are in the litigation. So assuming you have more people involved, there's going to be less money per claimant. On top of that, like you said on multiple occasions, this gives defense ammunition to introduce and lobby for tort reform that could just put an end to all of this and put an end to this pretty great institution that provides recourse to claimants with some trade-offs involved that, you know, we're working to get around. But it's an amazing mission, and I would encourage everybody listening to investigate more about what Katherine is doing at Smart Reviews and with secondary intake, and to really think more about the cases they're getting and how they can move those cases forward. Katherine, before we wrap up, is there anything you would like to share?
I don't think so. I've really enjoyed doing this. I appreciate you putting me on.
Yeah.
I was very nervous, so
As I
I
am
was like, I don't
always
know what to do with
whenever I
my
do
hands.
something. Yeah. No, I thought it was a great
You too.
conversation, and I'm glad we had it. And I wish you all the best with your mission. And thank you.
Thank you so
Yep.
much. This is great.
Hey, thanks for tuning into the Law, AI, and Money podcast. If you enjoyed our conversation, be sure to like and subscribe so we can keep the conversation going. Thank you.